Hello, my audience. This is Paul, and today we are joined by Kim. Hope you can see it properly because we've never recorded a Skype conversation. And she is going to do a sort of Myers-Briggs typing session. Would you like to tell the audience what your qualifications are so that they know what I mean by sort of typing?
My name is Kim. I'm from Canada, so
Oh, wow, I didn't know that. That's cool.
and I've dabbled into typology. I started in my early 20s. I read a book which was kind of life-changing. Please Understand Me by David Kiersey. There's a test you can do in that book, but I just looked
Oh,
through the descriptions and I found INTP to, I really related to that personality type. Um, and then I guess maybe a couple months ago or something, I I wanted to get confirmation, that I was an INTP. So I paid for a practitioner, an MBTI practitioner, to type me, and she typed me as INTP. Um, I've read other books, or not books, but stuff online, like the tests online, and I took it for like 3 times, and I came out INTP. So I thought, okay, there is no doubt that I'm, I'm an INTP, and there's no doubt about that. So,
well, I
uh,
definitely did notice pretty strong extroverted feeling vibes coming from you at the start, so I think I can confirm at least that much.
yeah, and I took when I was my maybe early 30s. I took psychology, but through correspondence. I was living in a small town, and so I was working part-time so that I could take that course. And I finished it and got my certificate. So it's probably, I mean, it's not university or college, but I think it's an equivalent to a Bachelor of Arts in psychology. So, and I've got lots of books on typology, so they're so valuable to me. I love talking about typology and stuff.
Perfect. Well, I think that's good enough qualifications. I don't know what the audience thinks. They can let me know later. But yeah, I think if you end up giving me a proper typing today, then I'll trust your word for it. So the way I'm thinking I'm going to do this is that we won't let the audience know what type you think I am. We're just going to pretend that this is the first time you're ever meeting me, and you can ask whatever questions you deem appropriate. If you guys already know, then you can go along for the official ride of discovering it. And if you don't, then you can be like, now we know who you are, Paul. Now you're no longer an enigma.
All right. So, okay. So you think you're an ISTJ. Okay.
I strongly think that, but again, I'm not 100% sure. It just seems to make the most sense with what the function stack has told me.
Okay. Um, so are you familiar with the descriptions of the function stacks or of
I
IS?
am. Yep, I've memorized all of them.
Okay, so SI is, about past experiences, good memory, and know
Mm-hmm.
a lot of details. Um, but you know what? That's like the textbook kind of description. The way I think of SI, and this is kind of, I was thinking about this all day. SI is like, okay, they love tradition, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and they're kind of like the pillars or the glue, that keeps their family together, maybe a community, um,
Mm.
or a workplace. And so ISTJs and also ISFJs and ESFJs and ESTJs, basically Kiersey calls them the SJs, and they are basically like the pillars, the glue that keeps things together, like whether it's a
Hmm.
family, you keep the family together and have a strong bond. Um, Same at the workplace, you kind of are there, to kind of keep away the chaos, and just yeah, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Do you
Different wording than I'm typically used to, but I think I get it. If I'm understanding you correctly, then I think what I try to do is I have a very, very close-knit circle of friends and family that I love and respect
yeah,
and will go above and beyond for them.
yeah.
Like at my job, I'm always asking my boss if there's more that I can do. Sometimes I even ask, do you want me to come in an extra day so that I can help out more? I always ask the gym members, are the machines working okay? Is there anything I can do? I'm a very practical and concrete helper. I mean, I can give emotional support, but I don't prefer it. If someone needs my help, I prefer to be the handyman, the fix it guy, the one who says, what can I actually do, as opposed to, how can I make you feel better? Now,
Mhm,
I know the Bible does ask us to, love our enemies and to love everyone for that matter. So I'm definitely not opposed to emotional healing. But if I'm just being me right now and disconnecting myself from my faith, then I think I would be very sad if someone said, "Oh, Paul, just your support means the world to me." And I'm like, "But I didn't do anything. Now I'm disappointed. Give me something to do. Let me fix it. Let me get my hammer and my nails, maybe not the nails because I'm afraid of needles, but get a blunt equivalent and work on that." Does that fit your glue analogy?
Well, I was thinking also my grandma, well, she's passed away. She's not here anymore. But she was an ISFJ, and she
Mm-hmm.
had dinners, and she invited all the family together. And it was during that time, when she had the whole family together, it's like it was really nice, And then when she passed away, it's like everyone in my family, they're kind of doing their own thing. They're not, we're not as close as we were when my grandma was alive. So that's what I mean by, the glue, she held the family together, you know. It,
Mm.
does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I would say that for me, I'm not as good about initiating stuff for my immediate family because they kind of just want to come to me. My niece asks about me all the time.
Mhm.
But I would say that I'm constantly trying to have gatherings for my friends. Like I usually say at least once a month per friend, sometimes twice, once every 2 months if these particular friends are busy or if they have budgeting constraints.
Yeah.
Because I like a level of consistency in my friendships. It's not because I get lonely or because I am drained. It's because I just like to have that stability of knowing that the friend is there and not dead and not forgotten about me. So if I hypothetically hung out with a friend on the first of the month and then never saw them again until the first of the next month, that would be totally fine. Or if I hung out with someone on the 31st of the month and then hung out with them again on the first of the next month, that would be fine too. Just that general within a calendar month block of time is typically what I like to do. But I am pretty good at initiating things to do at hangouts. I'm usually the one that says, "This is what I would like to do." I
Mhm.
try to be a little bit less selfish and say like, "But if that's okay with you." But usually my friends are the ones that ask me to do most of the heavy lifting, and I don't mind. I like planning things. I've planned a half-day retreat before. It wasn't spectacular, but I imagine not too many people are able to do that.
I couldn't do that. So kudos to you.
Thank you. And my
um,
friends typically say that, oh, I'm sorry.
so yeah, that's what I mean. Like, okay, even in a friendship situation, you're like the glue there. You keep your friends, and it's you're just you keep things together. That's what I mean by the pillar or the glue. You keep your traditions, your friends, things like that. That's what I mean by like the glue of society.
I I guess when you put it like that, it kind of makes sense. Maybe not like as much as most people, but I have personal reasons for that. Was there anything else you wanted to ask about that particular function?
I think we pretty well, I mean, you would know it pretty well, and so I guess we can go on to the next one. Okay, so SITE. Okay, so TE is about efficiency. How to do something so efficient. You know, um, whether in the workplace or when you're with your family or friends. Um, but TE also, I mean, you have that TE, you have that razor sharp logic. When I was thinking about that too today, as the TE to me is like razor sharp logic. You're when you make your decisions, you're logical. You know, you you make sure you have all the facts um, before you state things. In a logical way. So I don't know, that's what it kind of reminds me of. Um, I I was actually thinking also too that with TE that you have, you could be a good lawyer. You know that? Oh, I'm
I
yes.
I really like the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney games, which obviously they're not one-to-one perfect replicas of the courtroom, but they do involve looking through your evidence
Yeah.
as well as looking at the witness testimonies and saying, wait a minute, what you're saying does not match with the evidence. And then you yell a very satisfying objection. And in some of the games, you could even shout into the in-game microphone. And I
Yes.
love those games. I've played every single one of them that's come out in North America. There's one that's still in Japan. I'm not much of the importing type of person, and I can't speak Japanese or read it, so wouldn't do me any good anyway.
So,
Um,
that's funny that, when I mentioned that about being a lawyer and you play video games to pretend to be a lawyer. But yeah, that's what TE is. Like, they could make good lawyers, efficiency, how to get things done, and um,
well, I do have a question for you before we continue with this.
yeah,
So, the function that I have the hardest time explaining to Myers-Briggs newbies is the difference between extroverted and introverted thinking. I think I know the difference pretty well, but could you re-explain it just in case? Specifically introverted thinking. I really want to know what that's all about.
extroverted thinking is it's clean. I've heard this on YouTube by one of the practitioners, and she said that TI is like clean sliced logic. You know, does that make sense?
Not really. Do you have an example?
Okay, TI, they can break things down, to its very essence. Like if someone, or also, okay, TI is also, they check for consistency, or if there's inconsistency, then, they want to kind of get in there and say, okay, this statement it's not consistent with this, so that's
Hmm.
basically TI is kind of, is it consistent or is it not consistent? And if it is, we have to explain our position on that. And TE, like I said, TE is efficiency, strategic. So I don't know if you've ever been strategic in your life at all or anything.
Well, I do really like chess, and I think I'm pretty
Yeah,
good at it.
yeah, that's your TE helping you there. Yeah,
I would also say that when I'm at my job, one thing that's probably the highest priority is making sure the job gets done properly.
yeah,
I don't want to make up my own rules. I want to make sure that if my boss has a specific set of instructions, that I follow them. And if I were to improvise, it's only because legitimately the rules of the workplace told me to. So, for example, I work as a janitor at Anytime Fitness, which means that, of course, anyone can come in at any time. So I very rarely have a day where the gym is empty. And when I'm given my duties, I have to always be aware of the possibility that someone may be working out and I will have to not do my job and interrupt their workout. So I'll have to say, okay, even though my checklist says I have to clean this area, I can't clean this area because that's disrupting the customer. So what would be the next best thing, and how would I make sure to eventually remember where that other thing is so that I can get back to it later? And typically, I think I do a pretty good job. Like, uh, I would say that I don't know, I kind of act a little bit like a machine at work where I sort of get into a pattern of how to do it, and then my body sort of like moves on its own without even really giving it too much thought.
Yeah, it's like you have a system at your work.
Yes,
That
very
that works
much so.
that works
Even
for you. Yeah. Yeah.
we even have a checklist in the back that literally says like check this off when we're done. My boss forgot to print out new paper, so lately I've just done it in my head.
Okay. Well, I mean,
And I also have
oh, sorry.
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I did clean a dentist office, so I know I know what you're talking about. You kind of build up a system, and you use it, and it helps you to get things done thoroughly, but quickly. And so I kind of know what it's like to clean, and establish.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, you do need a system, but you got to be thorough. You can't do a half. You know what I'm talking about.
A
I don't.
half-hearted job, yeah,
Yeah,
you wanna make sure you give it
yeah,
100%.
half-hearted job. Yeah, yeah. I'm not able to right now because I have health problems, but hopefully down the road I will get back to that.
Well, not only do I have a routine of how to get my job done, but I literally have to ask questions if there is something brand new that comes up at the job that I've never expected. I'm not very good at uh, coming up with an entirely new way of doing things. And if I'm like by myself and I'm forced to, I usually go into the back room and I write on the notebook, was I supposed to do this? So it always makes me very uneasy when I have to try to entertain new possibilities. Usually, if I do improvise, it's because I've had customer service jobs in the past. Well, sort of. I was the dining room host at Culver's, so that did involve a certain amount of making sure the customers were okay. So that would be probably the only area where I would improvise, is like if the customer said, "Hey, I noticed that this machine is not working. Can you help me with it?" I might think, well, I don't have too much experience with the machines because I'm more of a cleaner than a fixer, but I'll see what I can do. And usually I'm able to help them. And if not, I report to my boss what the issue is. And she said I've handled it perfectly whenever I don't know how to do something.
Well, you know what? That's your NE. Your NE is the last in your functions, and NE kind of um, improvises. It's a function where you can improvise, and or you may come up with an idea to solve a problem. Like you said, you solve the problem, and things worked out. Um, yeah, so that's what NE is. Um, it helps you to be open to an idea and open to possibilities. Is that do you
Uh,
relate to that, or?
I I relate to that a little bit, but I would say that my ratio of liking new ideas is pretty small. Like
Yeah,
every now and then I'll have like
because you know why? Because it's the fourth, I think. It's rarely
it
tapped.
is, well, it's the fourth for the ISTJs and the ISFJs, yes.
Yeah, and so it's a function that's rarely used, but if you can hone it, you have these brilliant ideas, and possibilities. So
I mean, I do keep
ever
coming
just
up with new ideas. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I do keep coming up with new ideas for my YouTube channel, but they're typically rooted in familiarity. Like, for example, I made a new intro to my channel this year. But if you've paid attention to the intro, you'll notice that it's all just clips of videos I've already done, just put together in a nice little montage. Or
Mhm.
I might say, how can I make a best games of 2023 list, which sounds innovative,
It is.
but I've already been doing that for several years. So it's my way of saying, how can I keep this tradition going, but not let it literally be copy and paste, have it like be relevant to the current year.
Mm.
So when I say new ideas are few and far between, that's what I mean, is they're very sporadic, and people on my channel know that my more wild and outlandish videos are usually only like once or twice a year.
Mm. Okay.
I typically do the same things. Some people have complained about that. I don't particularly care. I like having that consistency in my channel.
Yeah, yeah.
And
If that's what you're comfortable with, and you don't get stressed out about it, then that's how that's how you're wired. So.
well, it actually does stress me out to go away from my routine, because one person suggested that I review, I think it was Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, and I just got really uneasy about that because I was like, I've only ever reviewed games that came out on Nintendo systems,
Mhm.
and Security Breach isn't on a Nintendo system, so that would be my first non-Nintendo review. I don't know how I'd feel about that.
Mm. Okay. Um, okay, then you have FI. So FI is about authenticity, your inner core values. Um, you may have certain core values that you you have, and so does that resonate with?
Well, I think I have core values, but I do remember hearing somewhere that Myers-Briggs doesn't take into account religion, which is where I think there's a little bit of a gray area between introverted and extroverted feeling. Because obviously, as Christians, there's a lot of stuff that Jesus asks us to do that is very extroverted feeling in nature, like love your enemies. Like that is very much a thinking outside of yourself type of experience. He says stuff like, if you see someone in need, go and help them. That also sounds more like an extroverted feeling thing to do.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if introverted feeling was only about morals, then I would say all of the extroverted feelers in the world can't have any morals. So it seems like the two functions kind of overlap a little bit.
Okay.
So, from the perspective of Christianity, how would you define the difference in the two feeling functions?
Okay, well, I'm a Christian too, and yeah, I'm taught to love our neighbors as ourselves. Um, but you know what? I credit my faith, my religion, for my FE is quite strong, and I attribute that to my faith, to my Christian religion, and so. Um, and that's the same with you. You're a religious person, so um, okay, so FI basically is there's authenticity. You desire authenticity, but also
Yeah.
your core values. It's personal. It's inward, um, and it's like okay, so it's like you're saying to yourself, okay, how do I feel about this? Your situation came up, and you're in a room with people and stuff, um, and something happens um, in the situation, and you would for an FI person, they would say, well, how do I feel about this? Does this feel
Hmm.
does this feel right? Does this feel wrong? Um, how can I make myself more positive, and or to That's as far as I get with FI. But FE is definitely it's outwards, and FE is like they're kind of people pleasing. Um, they can be chameleon. That means whatever they'll go with whatever the group is doing. Um, and they want to make sure everyone is comfortable and having a good time. And FE is, yeah, it's like having deep discussions about things, like deep discussions. Um, you know, does that kind of resonate with you, or the FI?
Um, so I think more of the introverted feeling makes sense
Yeah.
than the extroverted feeling, but that's not to say I don't relate to anything because I do want to make sure people are happy, but a lot of times I don't know what to do to get to that point.
Mhm.
Or if it goes against my faith, I would just say, nope. I know that's what's going to make you happy, but God says not to do it. So I am not going to entertain your delusions.
Mhm.
As you were talking about group dynamics, I was thinking about a party I went to 2 days ago. And I had told my friend, like, hey, I'm on a really tight budget. I know you wanted to go out to lunch and dinner, so I'm going to bring my own lunch so we can save on expenses. Yet she still took the group to a restaurant anyway, and I was the only one who didn't order anything. And I just kind of sat there while the others talked until one of the guys in the group finally looked over and he's like, you're allowed to eat, you know. And I was like, but it's not proper to get out your own food at a restaurant. And he said, well, would you like me to tell the waiter that you have dietary restrictions? And I said, well, I don't have dietary restrictions, so I don't want you to lie. So
No.
they ended up having to ask the waiter if I could eat my own food because I didn't have the budget to keep buying all this extravagant stuff.
Yeah.
And then I did. And I just remembered I was pretty miserable that whole hangout
Mm.
because I kept like we kept going into different stores because my friend's an ESFP, you know that they're constantly
Oh.
loving to experiment. And I'm there being like, I really don't want to have to spend so much money, but like it's her birthday, so I know she wants to be happy, but like I also want to make sure my budget is happy.
Yeah.
So I ended up like kind of staying in the background. I didn't really talk to people unless they talked to me first. When they gave out free samples at one of the restaurants, I had like one chocolate peanut, and that was it because I thought if I have too many, that'll be unhealthy. So let's
Yeah.
keep everything in moderation. And then when it came to dinner time, I had a really hard time understanding when enough was enough when we got onto a particular subject. Like there was one particular person who was asking me about Myers-Briggs, and I would like answer that and then move on to something else. Then I'd be like, oh, I just had a new thought. And I'd turn to him and I'd share another thought, and I'd be thinking, I think he's uncomfortable with this, but I'm not sure. I don't know how to tell. So I kept saying, like, oh, sorry, did I step on any toes? He's like, "No, no, you're fine." And I'd be like, "Are you sure?" Because I kind of feel like I might have stepped overboard. But then when he said, "Okay," I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm just going to keep plowing on." So by the end of the hangout, because I know she's probably watching this and I probably made a fool of myself, I made sure to like she asked me how was the day, and I specifically said when we were at the bar and when we were at the dinner restaurant, then I was having fun. But then I said, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do this again because this is probably just too much for me. But then I tried to make a more like, but let me explain myself properly. But then someone was trying to get into the driveway, so we had to like quickly leave the conversation at that. But the bottom line was I felt bad about being so blunt, but I felt like if I wasn't blunt, I would be lying. And I just don't feel right about any form of lying, even white lying. It just, well, for one, the Bible says not to. But I think even if the Bible didn't, there's just this inward desire of mine to always be myself and to never, ever be a faker. And if I
That
have to be a faker and people hate it, then I'm going to be like, well, too bad. This is me being me.
That's FI in a nutshell. That is a good explanation for FI. Yeah. Just be yourself, be authentic. Um, and if someone crosses your core values or steps on them, you're going to be blunt and you're going to tell them, right? So, am I right
But
about
I
that?
don't wanna be too blunt
No,
because
not
I know the
harsh way, not blunt in a harsh way, but straightforward, you know,
okay, I
uh,
see, yeah.
but not to offend. No, I
No,
what
I don't
you mean.
I mean, I don't mind offending people if they are, like, going against the faith or, like, trying to force me to follow a train of belief that doesn't make sense.
Hmm.
But I don't like offending people if it's, like, against the rules of common courtesy. Like, if I don't know, just burp out of nowhere, I'd be like, "Oh, I am so sorry. That was an accident." But if people are like, "Paul, you looked at me for 2 seconds. I'm offended." I'm gonna be like, "Chill out."
I would say that too. Do you have any more questions that we can talk more
So,
about this type or?
well, keep in mind that I wanted to make sure that we were coming at this kinda in a blank slate way. Like, obviously, you've seen my channel and my videos, and before we did this talk, you seemed to think I was an ISTJ.
Oh
But
yeah, I think you are. Yeah.
okay. But I wanted to just play a little bit of devil's advocate because I'm sure you know that I've been making a series of videos, like, talking about all of the other type possibilities because I've been mistyped as almost every single type in the book except for I think INTP, ENTP, and ISTP are like the only ones I've never been mistyped as. I think I've literally gotten all of the others. And so for the naysayers out there, I was wondering if you could do devil's advocate for like some of the other functions or other positions because they might say like I agree with you for the functions but I disagree with the order because there was one guy who thought I was an ENFP, and that's what started this whole
Oh
journey of
no.
trying to figure me out.
No, you're definitely not that.
What would you say to any audience member that thinks I am an ENFP? How would you defend against that?
I would say that you're not to the audience that Paul is not an ENFP for the reason that he's not extroverted. um, and he doesn't have any as the lead function. Your NE's on the bottom. You're definitely, you don't have lead NE, but you have FI. So yeah, I think a lot of the audience is going to think that you're an ISTJ because ENFPs, they're like super extroverted. They're like all over the place because the NE, it just, oh, I got this great idea. I got to start this project now. They don't finish the project. Oh, I got this great idea. I'm going to do this, and so they're just like all over the place, doing projects and not finishing them because the NE is on overdrive there. So I
I
don't think
mean,
that's what you are.
it is true there are some books I never finished, but I also think that the amount of times I've had ideas for books is relatively slim. Like, I had my novel trilogy, and I did finish those in manuscript form, and then I finished a 4th book. Technically, I finished a 5th, but it was, like, this very abstract trying to fool my proofreader into not realizing that he was the main character of the book, and that all the other characters were, like, going beyond the 4th wall to address him. I say that that was sort of finished because it was written as a way to fool him. It wasn't meant to be, like, published to anyone else because no one else is him.
That's your NE. I mean, get ideas for a book. That's your NE. Yeah. So you must, I don't know, maybe you have honed in and practiced your NE. And,
I
uh,
think
you
so, because
know,
I used to be pretty stubborn about keeping things, like, very rigid in my life. Like, when I went to, say, a youth group or a young adult meeting, I'd always have to sit in the same chair, and I'd literally be like, "That's my chair. Get out of it. That's where I always sit." I'd
that
always have to
that's
be
your
exactly on
FI. That's your
And so,
SI, the whole routine. That's my special seat. How dare anyone else sit on it? That's my seat. That's where I sat for practically all my life. So yeah,
yep. But
that's
I
definitely
have learned to get
SI.
more
Yeah.
relaxed because I realize that that comes across as very OCD. So I say, well, it's not the most it doesn't make any logical sense to have these seats because it's not like they're giving me like better ability to pay the bills. They're not like enforcing my life. It's just a dopamine rush, and I can get dopamine rushes from other sources.
Mm.
That being said, I do generally like to wake up at the same time. I do generally like to have like a certain amount of space before work to recharge before I'm like thrust into a chaotic environment. And I do like generally doing the same things whenever I hang out with my friends. So I still have that preference for routine, but
Yeah.
every now and then I come up with some totally
You have a strong presence for routine and tradition and all that stuff. Yeah.
but every now and then I can come up with the most oddball, off the wall, crazy joke that gets everyone laughing.
That's any. That's your
Yep.
end. And also, ISTJs, their sense of humor, they've got this kind of sarcastic, kind of raw wittiness about them. That their sarcasm, that kind of that's their sense of humor.
Yeah, I would say that fits
Do
me
you
very well.
relate to that?
Yes, very much so. I am that person that always jokes about beheading and decapitation and dying and death. But then I also joke about like dad jokes. Like the other
Mm.
day I was on the phone with my friend and she said, "Why, I'm worried about crunching the numbers too much." And I said, "Well, at least the numbers aren't chewy."
That's good.
So I have like a combination of really corny, literal thinking jokes, but also like very dark and depressing subject matters where people have to say like, "Paul, you're creeping me out by that." And I'm like, everyone's gonna die eventually. So
So
it's it's
that's a
something you gotta be prepared for.
yeah. So that's a satirical humor then coming out there. Satirical
Uh,
humor, kind of like satirical is dark humor. So
I guess dark humor kind of fits me a lot. I know I don't really like watching a lot of satire movies, but the ones that I do enjoy, I'm like the biggest fan of. Like I really love Stanley Parable. Like my ch- if you've ever watched either my best games or my best memories of 2022 video, the Stanley Parable love is just I don't usually use this kind of expressive language, but it's just oozing out of the video. And that's a very satirical game, and I love it because it's willing to, like, call out a spade by breaking the fourth wall and saying, like, "Well, this is a stupid tradition in video games," and I'm like, "Yes, I love it when people realize the absurdity of how media works."
yeah, that sounds interesting. Interesting game. Yeah.
It's kind of a boring game from a gameplay perspective because all you really do is walk around and you have a narrator that tells you everything that's going on. If you don't do what he says, then he gets mad at you for narrative contradiction, and
Mm.
like in the remake that I talked about in those videos, it like calls out where maybe the remake didn't have enough content and that they should have just poured it over the original directly. And I'm like, I'm loving this kind of humor. This is hilarious.
Yeah, yeah, that's dark humor. I mean, I'm that way too sometimes. I can actually I was like that at a friend's house. Her son made some sort of joke, and I just kind of, you know, said something kind of dark, and he's like, "Whoa!" So, "Oh, wow." And I said, "Well, that's my dark humor coming out." But very few people actually will know about that. Only those who are close to me. I wouldn't normally, say a satirical joke about something, to just some random person.
Yeah,
It's only, for my close friends, and
I think I would probably say the
they don't
same thing
judge
for
me
me.
for it. They, so.
Yeah. I would probably say the same thing because I don't think I would ever make a dark humor joke to say one of the customers at the
Yeah.
gym. I would want to be as polite and approachable as possible. I wouldn't want to joke about death around them. I'd wait until I was with my best friend and then
Yeah.
tell him off for coughing into his hands and being unsanitary.
Mhm.
That's why I thought when I first got into Myers-Briggs, I thought I was an ESTJ because I do have that ability to be very forceful about things. Like I know how things should be done, and I don't typically have a problem with like knowing, oh, that's incorrect. I better step in and fix it. But then I started looking at the order of the cognitive functions, and it didn't seem like I was that low on introverted feeling because I was like, now, wait a minute. I'm not afraid of my emotions. I don't think emotions make me weak. And they're like, but that's what ESTJs are. They're all about efficiency. And I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, I'll be efficient after I have the energy. But right now, I need a nap. And they're like, but ESTJs get energy from being efficient. I'm like,
they
well, I
do.
must be a different type of ESTJ then. And
They
I I
they
just
are
had
they
oh,
are
I'm sorry.
go-getters. ESTJs are go-getters. It's like, you know, I was watching a video, one of Joyce Ming's videos, and she had the thing about ESTJs. Um, and one of them said, one of them actually wakes up at 2 in the morning and does her routine. And when I heard that, I thought to myself, 2 in the morning? That is
Yeah.
start your day in 2 in the morning? That's craziness. I could never wake up at 2 in the morning and start your day. I thought that was
Yeah,
crazy.
I would agree. That's ludicrous. I would say that for me, if something needs to be done, I'll prioritize how much of a necessity is it to get done. Because maybe I
Yes.
don't have to do the laundry right away. Maybe it can wait. But I don't want it to get to be so bad that it's overflowing. So knowing the proper time and place to do things, because again, I don't want to come across as OCD or doing it for its own sake. That's why I really hate stuff like holidays, because they're like, hey, because it's Thanksgiving, we have to have turkey. I'm like, why? I don't like turkey.
Hmm. Okay. So,
And I
so
also think about the resources that could be drained from having to get the turkey. I'm like, just get a cheap pizza from Little Caesars and like, do we even have to get together for that matter? It's just an arbitrary day just because Christopher Columbus happened to set sail thousands of years ago. We still have to do that today. It doesn't make much sense to me.
okay, so I guess for certain things you don't worry too much about tradition and certain things then.
Not really, but I do like personal traditions. I love traditions that have to do with something that happened in my life that's meaningful. So, for example, before COVID hit, I used to love going to the youth conferences and chaperoning, and I'd make sure I was there every single year. And I'd like have a similar shirt. Like I'd keep track of what shirts I was wearing and wear that shirt again. Or I'd like have a notebook so that I would always remember who was there, and I'd be like, yes, we're back here with the same floor and the same walls and the same handrails. And I'm just so in bliss because it means something to me personally.
Yeah. And that is that's your FI. That's your FI coming out. Um, I know for myself, yeah, I mean, when I go to my place of worship, it's like, you feel peace there and you enjoy, um, because in my religion, there are people that give talks, probably the same, in your religion. Um, they give talks, and it's always really well thought out talks, just about things that are happening in the world and that, um, we're close to the last days. You can just notice everything around, just people are not, who they were, say years ago. Years ago, everything was kind of, not so complicated. I mean, we're in times now, we're in critical times, you know.
Hmm.
That's why there's so many bad things happening because we're so close, to the end. I don't know if
Hmm.
you're familiar, like if you agree with that or.
I
Critical.
kind of neither agree nor disagree because I don't have enough information to make a conclusion. I haven't researched enough about what the Catholic Church constitutes as when you can definitively say it's the end times. So it's like, I mean, if the end times are coming soon, then I'll prepare for it. If not, then I do know that the Bible says that the exact time the
Yeah.
end time comes is
Yeah.
unclear to everyone except
Yes.
God.
No one knows except for God. You're right. But in my religion, we kind of look around the world and we see that, things are a lot more difficult, and it's more stressful. It's compared to years ago when I was a child, and you can just run around in your neighborhood and not lock your door because it was more safe back then, but you can't do that now.
Yeah, that's
uh,
true.
there's so much lawlessness going around. It was never like that before, so when you kind of keep in touch with what's happening around the world, it's like it's getting worse. It's not getting any better, you know? Is that
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that, and my family definitely gets, well, I don't know how many people directly tell us this, but usually, like, when I'm paying attention to, like, for example, what people have to say about the LGBT communities, I pay attention to their pattern of thinking.
Mhm.
And then, like, when my dad says a certain thing about how they think, I'll be like, "You do realize that if my friends were listening to you, they'd call you a transphobe." And I think about how they would probably call me one, even though most people don't, because the Bible tells us to treat everyone with respect.
Yes.
So obviously, I still want to love and support and care for people in the LGBT community. But at the same time, the Bible also says that God made us and he made us male and female. So going against that would be taking the verse of whoever denies me on earth will deny me in heaven. So I say to these people, like, I will respect you and I'll treat you with as much kindness and compassion as you want, but I will not call you what you are not because one, that's against biology, and two, that's against my religion.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that you're not born gay, you know, and I believe that it's a choice that you've made to have this kind of lifestyle. Like you've made that choice. Um, that's my thoughts on that, about being gay and lesbian and stuff like that.
I mean, for the way my religion teaches about in terms of sexual orientation is they don't condemn having attraction for the same gender. It's if you do something about it. That's the
Yeah,
problem.
yeah,
Because the Bible says not to fornicate and not to commit adultery,
yeah.
but it doesn't say do not have attractions at all. Or at least if it does, it's like not meant to be taken at face value. Because it was written thousands of years ago. So that's
Yeah.
why in my religion we have the magisterium to make sure that people are interpreting it as it was intended,
Mhm.
but just with modern language.
Okay. Um, well, how I there's a section in the Bible that talks about. I don't remember the exact scripture, but I know the account. It takes place in Sodom and Gomorrah. Do you know Sodom and Gomorrah, the
Yep.
cities? Okay, and
Yeah,
you
that was when God was going to destroy the city, and
yes,
there were men that wanted to rape Lot,
yes,
and then later Saint Paul said the people that will not inherit the kingdom of heaven are sodomites, and that was the
yes,
one sin that the Bible like explicitly spelled out. They said they were trying to rape Lot, and they were
yeah,
men trying to rape another man,
yeah.
and that is not only gay but it's also adulterous even if they were women.
Yeah. It was so like that whole lifestyle, it was so detestable to God, so wicked, and so yeah, they had to be destroyed. Lot was and his family were the only righteous ones living in that city. And as you remember, there was an angel there that took hold of Lot and said, "Okay, you have to leave. You have to leave everything behind, and you have to go." and don't look back. But Lot's wife looked back and then she turned into a pillar of salt. So the lesson is that, something coming from God, like this angel directing them, it was for their safety. So, and I think that's where I, we're homosexual or gay or lesbians. I think that's where it kind of stemmed from Sodom and Gomorrah. They were like
Yeah,
the,
I think so too.
yeah,
Now, as far as how that relates to Myers-Briggs, I think any type can be either for or against LGBT stuff.
sure, yeah.
But I think each type approaches it in a different way.
Mhm.
So if you're dead set certain that I was an ISTJ, then what functions would you think that I'm using to bolster that claim?
Okay, about okay, what was it again? About gays and all that
Well,
stuff?
actually, I kind of wanted to change the subject because
Okay,
there was another thing that popped up in my head, not because
okay.
I'm uncomfortable with the subject,
Yeah, no, okay,
but
shoot.
because there was something someone else asked me quite a few months ago and I wanted to get clarification on it.
Okay, what is it?
That in itself made someone think I was an ENFP. They said ISTJs don't change the subject. It's like, whatever.
Um,
Anyway,
I,
the answer is one of my friends was wondering if it's possible to develop a function that's not on your function stack. The example that she used is she said, Paul, even though you clearly use introverted feeling and you're an ISTJ, I can see that you've really pushed your extroverted feeling as a result of your religion. Do you happen to know if that's actually possible, or do you just think there can be like the shadow functions in disguise by using your primary functions?
um, I am not too familiar with like the shadow functions and um, I mean this is what I mean I've seen videos. This guy has popped up so many videos. Okay, I don't know if you know him, C.S. Joseph. I don't know
I've
if
heard of him.
okay, so he has this whole theory that we could be different personality types. Like um, we can, okay, he's got this theory, the four sides of your mind. Okay.
Okay.
So when you're stressed out, you're okay, so and he claims to be an ETP. So, and he was explaining his shadow function or other function that he goes to is INTJ. And I'm just thinking to myself, you can't change your personality. You can't go from one personality to another personality to another personality. I'm thinking, and I asked him that question. I said, how does one, change their personality to be something different? Can you explain it to me? And he never did. So
Hmm.
my thinking on that is that you can't change your personality. You're wired that way, but you can improve on your functions. That's what I believe. Like, I don't. How do you relate to that?
I do think that it's true that you can't really change your personality type, but I also know that personality as a broad spectrum is unique to every person. And so there might be certain traits that we have as individuals that might not necessarily fit under the classic Myers-Briggs stereotyping. Because one of the most common things I'm told is that I'm an ISFJ because they say you really love to make people happy and you love to serve and you don't like offending people and getting in conflicts.
Yeah.
And I say, yes, that's true. But I also have heard that extroverted feeling is kind of like an emotion sponge. And I don't really feel that way except when I'm in environments where it's like really charged with the Holy Spirit. So I think if it's true that I have developed extroverted feeling, but yet it's not in my stack, I think it's divine intervention because
Yeah.
I've had conferences where I can just like snap my fingers and be a totally different person. And I think if you were to see me at those conferences and didn't know that it was me, you'd be like, "Oh, he's totally an ENFJ right now because he's like bolstering this person and hearing their sorrows and sobbing with them and praying over them and saying, 'Come, Holy Spirit,' and rejuvenate and talking the way those intuitives do because that's what God needs me to do in that moment."
Okay. Like I said, I mean, my FE is well developed because of my faith. Um, you know, I helped my best friend move into another apartment. Um, she has a lot of stuff, but we, you know, pretty well got everything in it, you know, set up and in its place. Um, and that to me, that's FE. You know, people that have extroverted feeling. You know, they really want to help someone. You know, um, and be of service to someone, you know, and making people comfortable and having deep conversations about the meaning of life. You know, that's another way of you know, contrasting FI and FE. Whereas FI is like, okay, so someone has stepped on my moral code on one of them. You know, how how do I feel about this? I mean, what do I do? You know, so FI is more like it's, you know, you got to make yourself happy first. You know, that's the way I look at it, anyways. You got to make sure
Hmm.
you got to make sure that you are a healthy person emotionally in order to, you know, kind of be of service to other people. Whereas FE is like,
Hmm.
you know, they just go out there and they're in service to people. They, you know, they want to help out and everything. Um, they actually know the vibe. If you're at a get together, and you know, if I were to walk into a get together, I would know the vibe, you know, of everyone in the group. And so that's basically FE and FI. Does that make more
I think I relate.
clear?
I think
More
I definitely relate. I'm sorry.
is that clear to you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. I think based on what you're saying, it definitely seems like I relate more to the introverted feeling because I do like helping people and making people happy, but I don't ignore my own emotions. I
Gotcha.
usually say to myself, like, okay, am I too tired to help this person out?
Yes.
Uh, am I, do I have the know how to do it? Because, like, I find that when I'm helping people, it needs to be rooted in familiarity. And I
Yeah.
also want people to be able to use common sense and reason to know intrinsically that there's things you can be doing. Like, if someone comes up to me and is just like, "Paul, I spilled milk all over the floor. What do I do?" I'll be like, "Get a napkin." Like, why are you crying about it? You just get a napkin, wipe it up, it's all done. But if someone says, "Paul, I failed at my SIT," whatever that's called in
As a,
college, SIT, SAT, whatever it
as
is,
a, yeah.
I would be like, I have no idea how to help you because I never went to college. I hope you feel better, but I don't really know how to help you. So I hope you're able to get the help you need."
Yeah, that's FI. FI is like they sympathize with people, whereas FE is like they put themselves in that person's shoes of what they're going through. Whereas, like you said, FI, you know, it's um, do you know how did this situation make me feel, or am I tired, or I don't know, how do I feel? You know, it's more internal. It's yeah, it's basically, you know, making sure that you're happy first, and then you can make people comfortable and happy, you know?
Mm.
Is that,
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I do think I relate more to introverted feeling then.
yeah, yeah.
There are occasionally exceptions, like when I'm like way too tired, but say, I don't know, my brother calls me and says, I don't know, like, hey, Paul, I just had a miscarriage. I'll be like, oh, shoot, I don't have time for my own joy right now. I got to help him. But I wouldn't necessarily know what to say because I've never been in that context. So I'd just be like, well, I'd be here to listen, but I don't really know the practical thing to say. But I'm going to try to be there for you. I'm going to try to be a supportive big brother, but I don't know how to fix the problem. And then that makes me sad
Mhm.
because I'm feeling useless. Like I can't do enough. And then, like, another example is if someone is bothering my sister and I'm literally not able to step in and fix it myself, that also makes me sad. And I've expressed that to her sometimes. I've been like, how I wish I could just go up to these people and give them a piece of my mind, but you won't let me. So I am very, and I guess this goes full circle back to the start of the conversation. I'm a doer more than I am an emotional support. I
Yes.
want to take action and I
And
want
that's
to
and
fix it.
that's your TE. That's your TE coming out. Yeah. You want to get things done. It's got to be done a specific way, you know. It's yeah, you're looking for ways to be efficient, um, you know, to get things done, and when you get things done, then you can relax and do what you want, you know. So yeah,
So it seems like you're pretty confident about the ISTJ typing.
I am.
But just for one last bit of devil's advocate, just in case the audience is still having doubts, the other three personality types that share all four of those functions are the ESTJ, INFP, and ENFP. You've already said your defense about why you don't think I'm an ENFP, but why do you also think INFP and ESTJ don't apply?
Okay, ESTJs. Um, I know they have TE. I know they have SI. I can't exactly remember the other ones, but
Then
uh,
extroverted intuition and introverted feeling.
okay. So FI, so very similar in function stack. Um, but ESTJs, I mean, yeah, they're go-getters too, but they are um, very assertive. You know, um, if something gets, they have their plans, they have their goals, you know, that they've set, and they have their schedules, and everything is, you know, in its place. Um, but you know, they if someone gets in the way of their, you know, trying to get stuff done, it's like they're going to be very blunt, and they can be abrasive if they are unhealthy. If they're healthy, you know, they're not going to be abrasive. They're good, but that does not mean they're not going to let you know that, you know, uh, I'm trying to get this thing done, you know, and I don't need any distractions and all that stuff. And I think that's the same thing with ISTJs. When they're getting things done, they do not want any interruption. You know, they want to do, you know, get the thing done, whatever it is, with no disruption. Am I right? Does that?
Yes, very
Yeah.
much so. I wish I could just kick everyone out of the gym and be like, I have a job to do. Can't you idiots go work out somewhere else? That's what I'm thinking in my head. I'm obviously
Yeah.
not saying that out loud.
Yeah. 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 So that's ESTJs, and you're not an ESTJ because they're much more of a go-getter, and they're blunt. They're very blunt. Um, but I mean, the good things about them is, yes, they get things done. They're not lazy, you know. Um, yeah, and that's the same with ISTJs. You know, ISTJs, you know, they have a very good work ethic. You know, they believe in doing their job thoroughly instead of fast and sloppy. You know, it's thorough. it's in the nooks and crannies, that they make sure that those nooks and crannies are clean. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah,
what.
I think that's mostly me, yeah.
Yeah,
Now, what about the INFP? Now, I know you sometimes forget the function order. So theirs is introverted feeling,
yeah.
extroverted intuition, introverted sensing, extroverted thinking. Why do you think that's not a possibility?
Okay. Well, INFPs, obviously they have FI first, strong FI, um, and they have their moral compass. Um, if anyone steps on them, you know, they have TE at the bottom, so they're going to tap into their TE and they're going to be blunt. They're going to, you know, like if you've done something wrong or if you trampled on their moral code, yeah, they're going to use their TE and they're going to be blunt and they're going to tell you the honest truth about things, about whatever the person has said to the person who's offended. You're going to hear about it. Um, but normally they don't use it. They want to keep the harmony. They want to just like INFJs. They like to keep things harmonious. INFPs are the same way. They want to keep things harmonious and to have their peace, in their life. Thing is that INFPs are kind of they're in their heads a lot. Like their heads are in the clouds, and they love exploring new things. Their NE gives them helps them with ways that they can explore things, or they come up with new ideas to
Hmm.
explore something. That's basically what an INFP, and they're very passionate about their core values. Certain ones, they're very passionate about it. Um, they're the ones that are like they're so passionate about their what they believe. It's like they want to make changes. They want a better world for all of us. You know, they kind of want that.
Okay.
They kind of want that utopian world. Where
Hmm.
everyone's living. Everyone's loving one another, peace. Harmony. Um, so yeah, that's kind of an INFP. They're
That
very
doesn't sound like I can relate to elements of it, but it sounds like it's either too extreme or not extreme enough. Like, I don't think I'm the type of person that gets lost in daydreams hardly ever, unless I'm having a really bad day, which happens maybe like once every 3 years. But usually, if someone asks me something, I will be able to, as quickly as possible, be like, yes, what do you need? Without having that abruptness like the INTJs do. I am very aware of my surroundings.
You are, yeah.
And
You're very aware. Like, say if someone in your family moved something of yours, moved it somewhere else.
yep,
Now,
I would let them
if
have
you're
it.
okay, if you're an SI, if you're an SI, you have good memory and you know about details. You're going to walk in that room and you're going to say, you know what, you moved something because that something was here and now
Yep.
it's moved somewhere else, but you're going to recognize it right away. You're going to see. For me, I am not good with details. I would notice. Like, I was over at my friend's place a couple months ago, and she had this cabinet in her living room, and she goes, Kim, do you notice anything differently? And I'm looking around her apartment, looking everywhere, and I'm just like, I don't know. I don't really know what we did. And she says, oh, well, I put my son's arts and crafts collection in my cabinet. I've got a new microwave, and I think that's that. And I said, I didn't even notice. Well, because I am not hyper aware of my surroundings, so I'm terrible with details. And so
Hmm.
that's your superpower. That's your strength. I wish I had that.
Well, it can come with downsides too. Like sometimes I get caught up in PTSD moments where I like relive something in the past over and over again, and I'm just like regretting it so much. And then I like write a Facebook message to that person. I say, I am so sorry for being an idiot. They're like, what are you talking about, Paul? I totally forgot about that. But at least it also means I remember all the good times. And then I say,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I had a blast with you. And that person will be like, okay, yeah, I guess I had a blast. And I'm like, you don't remember that amazing day?
Well, I mean, it's just like my friend. Um, she was telling me, Kim, when you were younger, you used to wear, white jeans and a top that kind of showed your belly. And I'm just like, no, I don't think so. And she's like, no, really. And she's really hyper aware of her environment too, details and everything. And I'm just like, well, I don't remember that. I mean, that was so long ago. But to her,
Mm,
she's got a good memory, and she remembered all this stuff when I was a teenager, and I'm just like, no, that can't be me. I don't think so. So
yeah, that
yeah,
she
I'm so
sounds very much like me. I'm
I'm
even that person that if I notice someone is slightly taller, I'll be like, you got new shoes, didn't you?
yeah, I
Or I'll
would.
say, "Oh, we're on sloped ground, so that's why you look shorter is because 'cause you're at the lower part of the incline."
Yeah. I wouldn't worry too much about that myself. I'm not really aware of that stuff. Yeah.
Well, I'm very grateful that it seems like we have come to a conclusion. I think this may have probably quelled any doubts the audience might have had.
I hope so.
Granted, I think most of my audience has long come to the conclusion of ISTJ well before this, but I wanted to reach out to the handful of naysayers and be like, I'm going to prove it to you guys once and for all so that you're not just taking my word for it, you're taking other sources.
Yeah, I hope that I was able to help you with that. Like I said, I'm not a licensed practitioner, but my NE helps me with that, I guess. Um, yeah, so I hope that you're clear, you're comfortable with that type,
I
and
think so.
and everything's clarified for you. So,
I've come to the realization that ISTJs are one of the most underrated types.
oh,
And
also, I wanted to mention about ISTJs. They are so dependable. They are so like in their friendships. It's like they keep in touch with their friends. They never let their friends kind of disappear out of their minds, or like they're so devoted. They're devoted to their friends and devoted to their family, and that's such a beautiful quality to have.
the irony is that because we've never like talked in person, I was like, I never told you that. But yet you knew it just because of your studies of the functions in general. So that's, I'm sorry, did we lose you?
No, I'm listening.
So I I'm just amazed by how Myers-Briggs can like help a person know how a person is going to react before that person literally says, this is how I think. Because the whole time you were saying that, I'm like, that is so me to a T. Like, I'd be very surprised if there's a friend I forgot about. I'm sure there's some of them, but I
But
think my
that, but you know what?
core,
But you being devoted to your friends and being in touch with them, that's what I mean by you're the glue there. You keep your friendships together. You
oh,
you keep your family unit together. You're the pillars. All those, like I said, ISFJs, ESFJs, ESTJs, surprisingly, um, you guys are pillars. You're pillars of your community. You're a pillar to your family, like the glue that that keeps people together. You know. Do you agree with that?
Well,
Or
when you describe it like that, that does sound exactly like me.
oh, good.
Well, it looks like we've been talking for an hour and 17 minutes, so for the sake of
Okay.
space and time, we should probably prepare some kind of outro. So, do you have anything you would like to plug to the audience, and or do you have any, I don't know, tips, advice, anything you want to
Um,
tell them before you head out?
I don't have any. Um, what do you call it? I don't have any videos set up or anything, any content. I'm not a YouTuber. It would be too hard for me. You know, I was nervous coming into this. I'm very low key. And this sort of thing is kind of like stressful for me. So that's a reason why I would never be a YouTuber. um, yeah, I don't have anything to put in the description box below. Advice, you said? Do I have any advice?
Advice, life tips, Myers-Briggs tips, anything you want to tell the audience. Just it could be encouragement. It could be like, here's a tip for living. Here is how you not lose your hair. Like anything you want to tell them.
You know what? Just be yourself, you know, um, be your authentic self. Um, don't don't change for anyone. Be yourself, and the right kind of people will come into your life and will respect you and not judge you. Um, just don't be something you're not. Don't try to be another personality, because you know what? It's not natural. Um, it's not being authentic. It's not convincing. It's not convincing to another person. For a person to try to be another personality type. It because I've seen, I'm on YouTube a lot and I've watched a lot of videos, and there are people that they think they're a certain type, but when you see their videos and they're not they're not being themselves, like they honestly think that they are a certain type, like kind of deluded or something. And when you watch their videos, like say for example, okay, ENTP. One of the YouTubers thinks he's an ENTP, but when he makes a video, he's so different. Like he's not an ENTP. But I mean, like I said, there are people out there who think they are, they self-type themselves and they think they're this certain personality type, but their behavior, their functions, like I can tell when a person is not being themselves, when they're being something else. That's just my intuition telling me that just be yourself. Enjoy the the good qualities you have, and yeah, I think that's all I have to say on
I
that.
would agree with that. That's very good advice. In fact, I agree with it so much that I have gone on record saying if I ever change my channel's name, it would be just Paul. Because I want people to know that I'm just being myself. And if they don't like me, then, well, nothing's forcing you to stay on my channel.
That's right. Yeah.
All right, then. Well, I'd love to keep this on forever, but my hard drive has got to have its space. So thank you
Yeah.
very much, Kim, for coming
Oh,
on.
thank you.
This went way better than I thought it would because I've heard horror stories about INTPs, and you're absolutely nothing like how I envision them to be. So
Well,
thank you for being such a trendsetter for how even at the bottom, extroverted feeling can still just like really help a person feel in their element.
thank you for having me on this interview, whatever you call
Yeah, it
it.
was my pleasure.
I really enjoyed this. This is great. Yeah. Thank you.
Alrighty then. Well, audience, thank you very much for watching. Let me know down in the comments if there's anything you need cleared up, or if you want to give advice on how I can do the next type of video like this. Thank you very much to my patrons, Matthew Rakowski, Sploongo Splatcat, and Scooter Doodle. I'm going to need an end screen pretty soon if this keeps up. And until the next time, remember to keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye.
Bye.